Hey guys, I'm Lena. Welcome to my channel. I can promise today's video is going to be boring, technical, but insanely important if you want to make your prints better. Split filter or split grade printing is a way to control highlights and shadows separately using two filters instead of one. I was advised to try it when I got stuck with this one negative, which required 5 hands on the tail for dodging and burning, and even had I had those, I would have still gotten terrible results with weird halos. So I went online and read and watched some tutorials which basically said this: you do test strips with 0, 0 and 5 filters, pick the times where at 0, 0 the highlights start getting texture, and at 5 where the blacks start to show, do 2 exposures at those defined times on one sheet of paper, et voila! What I personally got as a result was a remarkably flat print. Open shadows, textured highlights, everything technically correct, and so ugly. I was desperate and complained to my professor. He decided to run experiments and instead of 0, 0 and 5 used 1 and 4, 2 and 3.5 filters. When I saw how beautifully the print transforms and how the paper reacts to filter changes, I did test myself and then gave up the one filter approach immediately, and I haven't printed a single photo with one filter since. Now, before we get into the whole split grade thing, let's see what the filters actually do. The higher the number, the higher the contrast. The deeper the blacks, the brighter the whites. How does it happen? Instead of getting into the very fascinating but at this point unnecessary color spectrum theory, I highly advise you to spend a couple of hours of your time printing the same negative with every filter and seeing the change yourself. Not my photos on the screen, but your own. Well, I promised it was going to be boring, but it's the best and fastest way to train your brain to intuitively pick the right contrast and visualize the outcome. Here's the right moment to insert 2 technical points. First, your life will be remarkably easier with under-the-lens filters. Easy to mount, fast to change, perfect for this technique. Treat them carefully, keep them clean, and don't worry about the loss of quality until you're printing something enormous, and even then. Second, print only within larger light bulbs from photo stores. Do not go to your local store and get a random light bulb. Not all light is equal. You might be lucky and get results on resin-coated paper, which is sensitive to a slightly different spectrum, but fiber-based paper will most likely not react to filter changes or react very little, so don't risk it. Now that this part is clarified, let's go back to our topic. So, what's wrong with printing with one filter, you may want to ask? Precisely nothing, except that you cannot control highlights and shadows separately, which almost inevitably leads to extra dodging and burning, and sometimes it's not exactly possible without getting halos. A good starting point for an average negative is filter 2.5. Looks like we're only getting more or less deep shadows at 12 seconds. However, with this time and filter, the highlights are pretty dull and the shadows still could be deeper. No problem, let's go up half a grade. Oh, that looks much better, and yet you see how the poster on the wall is still not deep enough? So let's increase time and finally get the shadows we're looking for, while unfortunately losing the shine in the highlights. Every filter and time change affects both shadows and highlights, and there is no way around it. Okay, we're done with those flat images and we're radically moving to filter 4. Oh, finally, nice contrast, which will need burning on his arm and face because the textures in the highlights are lost entirely. But if we increase time… Okay, I did not do that experiment, but trust me, it would be harsh and ugly and grainy. So, good middle ground if we want to have both deep blacks and textured whites without burning would be something like 14 seconds with 3.5 filter. Oh, it doesn't look bad at all, right? Why even bother with 2 filters? As you'll see later, a print like this is still a compromise. So now I'm going to show you my typical printing process, which I refined over the years and I found to be suitable for pretty much any types of negatives except very underexposed ones, in which case you would need just one very high filter. I always start with 2 and 4.5 filters for my average negatives. Why not 1 and 3.5? Well, you can start with 1 if you want, if your negative is overexposed or you have huge white areas or you like slightly duller images. But 3.5 for shadows is not the best choice because there is a huge change happening in contrast between 3.5 and 4, and it will be harder to adjust later on. So do either 4, 4.5 or 5. On the filter 2 test, we're looking for the area where the highlights just start getting a tiny bit of texture. Don't forget that the dry print will be a bit darker. If we print the whole image with those timer filter, it would look like this. With 4.5 filter, we're looking for little clusters of dark gray, very close to pure black but not quite. This would be the whole image with the selected time and filter. Now we take filter 2 and expose for 6 seconds. Without moving the paper, we change time and filter to 4.5 and 10 seconds and hit start again. Then process the exposed paper as usual. What basically happened is that the shadows got printed over the highlights without affecting them at all and only deepening the dark areas. From this point, you could start playing with filter 2 and adding time to have more highlight texture, or moving to filter 2.5 if you feel like having more separation in the gray areas, or decrease filter 4 time to open the shadows more. The possibilities are endless. However, I'm happy with the selected times, and even more so when I'm comparing the print to the one which previously seemed good. You can say, yeah, just take a higher contrast filter and you'll get same results. Well, remember our previous experiment? No, you won't. Both prints are technically correct, yet split filter printing allows to get a fantastic micro contrast in the gray areas. That's rarely possible to get with one filter without highlight or shadow compromises or dodging and burning. Hope by now you have an understanding of what split gray can do. Good news is, once you grasp it, this technique will work wonders for you. Bad news, if you want a seriously perfect, almost three-dimensional print, you won't be saved from dodging and burning. It will just be different, but we will talk about it in the second part of this video. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and YouTube not to miss it. For now, have fun in the darkroom. Bye! Actually, a photo like this would be so cool for the cover of the video. So they are like happily floating. Which you're filming, and then I'm taking one and I'm putting it here.
That looks nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
It just stopped. Look. This thing doesn't want to write. And I'm putting my hands in the fixer, of course.